You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Sherry Lip, the marketing manager here at Stimulus Technologies, and I am here with Stimulus Technology CEO Nathan Whitaker. And today we are going to be talking about the human side of cybersecurity because we have been talking a lot about tech and a lot about AI, and we thought it'd be nice to talk about people. Welcome, Nathan.
Thanks, Sherry, and always good to talk about the reason why we have technology. I often say that, we as a company, even though we're a technology company, we're here to serve people, and technology is here to make our lives better. We got to focus on the human side of things, whether it's the good or bad of human side of things.
Well, and today we're going to be talking about the good side. It's just the what people can do to help their company stay more secure. Because do you find that, Nathan, to start right out, that businesses kind of think if they get everything in place as far as security, that it's the tech side that handles it all?
There's more realization today than there ever has been that the human side of it is as or more important than the technology side. Historically, I do agree with that question that business leaders have thought that technology can take care of all of it, but that's changed, and I think the perception's changed quite a bit. The issue still is even if we understand that humans have to be the last line of defense and the first line of defense, how do we train them and get them to take those responsibilities seriously? So that's, I think, more the question than business leaders thinking that it's just a tech issue. I think there's been enough information and examples that humans are really the problem, and the solution.
Do you think, with more technology and especially more AI, that people are actually thinking about the human side even more now than they were before?
I think so, and probably a little bit more worried too, because it's harder and harder to detect what's real anymore. It's an interesting phenomenon that's happening. So, I mean, just a silly example, but you just scroll through social media, and it is almost impossible to tell what videos are AI generated or what are real. And last night my wife was showing me a cute video of a dog rescuing a bunny out of like a swimming pool, and it's like, was that real or was that fake? Probably it was AI generated. It's just, you just can't trust it, and it's still a cute video, but I think it's just harder and harder for humans to detect what's real or what's not. And so there's a bit of a backlash on some of this technology because people want real interactions with other human beings. And so we're looking for other opportunities to make the real connections. But that's an aside from what it is, but it's certainly becoming more difficult, and that's why referenced in the beginning that I think leaders believe that humans are an important and essential part of cybersecurity and technology in general. But how do we make sure that they are capable of the task that we're putting on them?
Yeah, and yeah, that's definitely great topics as far as AI goes. But when we're talking about, we use the term human firewall, which always just gives me this visual of people linking arms and standing there. But that's actually not what it is. Can you kind of explain what the term is?
Yeah, firewall is the idea that it blocks, a fire from entering a protected space. So back 30 years ago when I worked construction, I actually did fireproofing. That's the construction work I did for my sister for about a year. And, there was, spaces like stairwells, believe it or not, bathrooms, elevator shafts, things like that, that in building structures, we wanted to protect those spaces because that's, emergency exits, especially like elevator shafts and stairwells. And so we would seal up the pipes that would go in and out of these, and conduits that would go in and out of these spaces, So if there was a fire that broke out on one side, that the smoke and fire couldn't enter through tiny cracks that these pipes went through to get into these spaces. And it's the same today, the human firewall is, we're trying to prevent fire, smoke, other damage from entering into our companies. And in the end, humans are either going to stop the threat or potentially be the ones that let it in. So, where our hope is that the humans are both the first and last line of defense and not the weakest link in your protection systems of cybersecurity.
And before we get into some specifics that people can do, as a business owner, how do you start building that culture of cybersecurity awareness in your workplace?
The first part of it is awareness. It just, again, keeping that idea top of mind with your staff to know that they are that protection for the company. So it's not about tools, it's not about technology, it's really about the decisions that people are making each day and keeping that top of mind. We found in studies that just keeping that idea, whether it's through recurrent training, weekly little micro videos, just keeping it in mind for people creates vigilance. So I was just sharing this the other day with a group of business leaders, and one of the companies there had, mentioned that they had implemented these training inside their company over the last year. And I asked him to if he's has any, data of how it's improved their company of implementing this awareness training. And they do phishing simulations. So, send out fake emails to their employees to see if they click on links or not. And in the first couple of months that they were doing this, the average click on these phishing emails was about 30% of their employees, which, I mean, if they're clicking on a fake email, phishing email, they're also clicking on real phishing emails. So it's really scary to think that 30% of their employees are willing to click on a real phishing email. As their training progressed over the year, though, the click ratio went down to under 5%. So just by awareness, people are, knowing that these are coming in and they're making those changes, and that's a cultural change inside the business. It's not, technology change. It's not becoming more sophisticated. It's just bringing awareness into the culture of the company. The people there have to be the line of protection for the company.
We provide training on this, but what can people do? Phishing emails are kind of harder to spot now. In fact, I was just talking with someone whose YouTube channel got hijacked, and it was because they had responded to an email asking for a partnership. And she said, she checked them out, everything looked legit, and so she gave them access, and then
My
they
goodness.
locked her out. And so, but she's like, I thought I was doing all the right things.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's high likelihood that you will eventually at some point, even if you're doing all the right things, to fall victim. You know, s I mentioned clicking on links. That's certainly, behavior that's potential risk for fraud. We've often talked about things like reusing passwords is a big issue. We get these MFA prompts all the time. And if you're approving MFA prompts without thinking about it, that's a huge liability that could come up. We got to, as employees, think about what information we're sending over email and whether that's, correct or not. A good example is we were dealing with a vendor the other day, and, just in the middle of a line of communication about a different topic we had with this vendor, they said, "Oh, by the way, our ACH account change, please send our payments to this new account." And shared the routing number and account number for their bank. And I was shocked just to receive that in this random thread of email. And the first thing I did, I said, "Well, we're not going to change it by this email. We have to, verify, this account changed another way." But I also thought that's really problematic if they're just sharing ACH information over an unencrypted email channel. So, just training your employees on where and how they're sharing, confidential information. And, just like that story you just shared, how do you truly vet somebody if it's legitimate or not? And I think it's becoming difficult to do that because I think people are moving really fast and they want to get their work done quickly and efficiently. You have to slow down a little bit to detect these type of threats. And people are just overwhelmed, so they can't or they aren't able to slow down enough to detect what's going on.
Do you ever feel kind of an aside, we have kind of this zero trust and you start feeling like nothing's real. Do you ever feel like you've ever missed out on something that was real because you didn't believe it? How do you get over this feeling?
Yeah, that's interesting. Probably. Are there things that are too good to be true? Yeah, definitely blown off contacts that people have sent me, because people have reached out for different partnerships or opportunities that doesn't feel real. And a lot of them obviously are sales calls. As a business leader, I get a lot of vendors that call me up, and of course we do the marketing the same way, right? And try to get a hold of people. That's an unfortunate part because sometimes you are looking for new business partnerships, and you might turn things down because you are either too busy or just concerned that firewall is up. So that's a good thought, Sherry. And just thinking about, I don't necessarily have FOMO, fear of missing out, but I do, my guard is up a little bit more than maybe a lot of people, because of the industry that we're in. There's definitely more concerns about cybersecurity risk. And even if like the story you shared, even if you do everything right, it can still be taken advantage of. Fortunately, humans have been taking advantage of other humans since the beginning of time. So, personal contact with them, background checks, things like that, there's still people out there that are experts at taking advantage of others.
And yeah, that kind of led me into, especially in the business realm, if there's a phishing email, we'll actually progress a couple of steps seeming legit before you realize that how they get people to go along.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest tricks that they're using today. There's some statistics on SMS phishing or smishing. Those texts you get randomly. I'm sure everybody listening to the podcast has gotten one of them at some point. It says, this is a new phone, but we've communicated before. And well, this is the beginning of a new thread. So that's obviously not the case. But it's really easy to respond back. Oh yeah, this is Nathan Whitaker. Who's this? And they say, oh, it's Jane Smith. And I know that we met a few years ago at XYZ restaurant or something like that. Something that you may or may not remember. And you start a conversation with them, and they're friendly and they build up to some trust. And then after a little bit of trust, they say, there's an investment scam, but it's a initially legitimate, that they say, well, invest $500 and you can get it back immediately with interest. And sure enough, you put the $500 in and you make, $250 and you get your money back. It's all legit. And then they do that maybe once or twice. And then suddenly you lose tens of thousands of dollars because there's some trust built up. So these hackers are willing to legitimately spend money and time and effort, but money especially, to convince you that what they're saying they're going to do is real. And then they reel you into the larger scam. And so these hackers have become a lot more sophisticated to convince you to do something that you legitimately should never do. I mean, these type of scams, if it smells like bad fish, it is fish. So don't fall for it.
We're talking about the human side, but is there any capability of AI to help detect any phishing emails that wasn't there before?
Yeah, the AI spam detection is a lot more sophisticated than it was prior, but it's not perfect. I mean, it's really sometimes hard to detect. And if you turn it up too high, the detection rate, you get a lot more false positives, and so a lot more of the emails go into junk or detected as spam. So I've found that recently, that balance between over detection and appropriate detection is a difficult balance to hit. But AI detection is a real thing, and advanced security software is detecting that better today than it was yesterday, and will continue to be better. But unfortunately, it's a cat and mouse game. The hackers are using more sophistication to get into. So that's the reason why we just have to live a life with a little more skepticism. My book, the CEO's Digital Survival Guide, I talk about this concept of default to truth. And humans, are generally wired to default to truth, because if you live your life thinking that everybody's out to either scam you or hurt you or harm you or do something wrong, I mean, we never want to drive our car because we not trust that other drivers are obeying the rules. And some don't, but you can't assume that, everyone is not. So we have this innate wiring of default to truth inside our minds, and that's the way that we live in this world generally. But unfortunately, hackers take advantage of that, and get convince you to do something you wouldn't normally do, because they convince you that they're being truthful also. So you have to have a little bit of rewiring in the digital world, not default to truth all the time, and have some skepticism of the communications that are occurring. And when things feel a little bit out of line, then you deal with it a lot more.
One thing I find tricky when, kind of getting to like what can people do? What's easy stuff to do? Of course, checking your emails. But one thing I find tricky is that a lot of times in the email from it just says a name, and you have to hover over and kind of look at it really closely to see the actual email address. So I think that's a part of slowing down. But emails that used to be pretty easy. There was like words and stuff that scam emails would use, or misspellings, or we say like kindly or dear and like weird weird stuff like that. But that's not happening as much. So what should people be looking for?
Yeah, no, that's really a good question. So, I mean, we've talked a little bit about pausing. So things to look for, again, like you just mentioned, valid domain names. I still hackers are spending money to register domains, register email addresses that look very, very close. One letter is off rather than, it coming from something completely different. They're changing just a little bit, so it looks very real. So that's something, or they're hacking into somebody else's account that's actually a legitimate account. So I think, just pause and verify information. If it's something that, especially as financial issue involved, you need to take time to verify through, a multi-factor scenario. So, pick up the phone and call a known phone number. Don't just respond back and to the email and say, "Hey, what's your number that I can call you at to verify this information?" The hacker's going to give you their number. But, if you have a known phone number of the employee or the vendor that you're paying, call them and verify the change. Report suspicious activity. IT will help you, guide you through the process, and don't argue with them. That's one of the things that I found. There was a case that one of our customers had a spam email that was flagged as suspicious, so we went into the spam protection, and we would have had to allow it through. The sender or the receiver said, "Hey, this is somebody I communicate with all the time. Please send it through." And our team said, "No, the people that you communicate with would have a different domain. Their domain is slightly wrong. Our software flagged this because of language. You need to reach out to this person to see that they actually sent this." And then the client proceeded to argue with us and said, "No, this is somebody that we always talk to. You let it through. Don't block this." And we're just trying to protect you. So, if IT says, "Hey, there are some issues, make sure this is a valid email." Don't just default to anger. Follow through with what our recommendations are, because you again, you want to move through and do your work, but we want to protect you. So, if IT puts up some alarms, definitely follow their recommendation as much as possible.
And to kind of close it out, as a leader of a company, how do you and how do you recommend business leaders cultivate this culture as something that is important to do, but not as the employees understand the importance, and not just here's a task.
We have to be, as business leaders, the example of good habits, and show that we truly believe and back the methods that we're taking on. So, how does that look? That looks like, if you're having staff meetings, include security minutes, be the first one as a company owner to take the annual assessments and the training courses, call out team members that are doing well, and put them up as a positive example. So, yeah, I think building that culture and just starting by being the best example of security first, I think is where we start. You can do the opposite and you diminish it all. So, somebody shared with me an example the other day that the business leader made fun of the security training during an all hands company meeting. And you know what happened? Nobody took the security training anymore. And so he had to go back and make a correction and say, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I truly believe in this stuff and I've taken the training," and had a little bit of egg on his face. And so as business leaders, we have to reinforce this, by just doing some reminders and all hands meetings, share examples of that you're finding that are positive and solutions to real world problems, and just be the example and the positive example for the company on good habits. And as business leaders leads by example, the members of our team will follow.
People can get businesses can get a cybersecurity assessment from us. In fact, we had Carlos on a couple of episodes ago who helps us with that. So should they get a hold of us to get that done?
Of course. So if you wanted a third party to look at what you're doing, we actually use an outside firm to audit Stimulus, and we use their team to help us with these third party audits. So it's not just us, it's a third party firm that looks over your systems. They have security professionals. And there are, back end that they audit our posture to ensure that we're doing all the right things so we can use them to help our clients out. So it's a free assessment. It takes a couple of hours of time to get it done, but it gives you a quick outlook on where you're at, and it doesn't cost anything at all to have this third party look over it. So reach out to us. You can go onto our website, and it's one of the big links right at the beginning to book that third party assessment. So happy to help anybody that has any concerns about where they're at inside their companies.
All right. And if anybody has any stories like the one we told, let us know in the comments. I'm sure this happens all the time. You're not alone there. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.